Welcome to the second part of this short video series that we are working on about hand and foot drum fills, or one example of a hand and foot drum fill. There are of course many different things that you can play, but we're focusing on a particular type of fill. And in part one, we spent some time working on a 4-stroke roll. So that was 2 shots with your hands, so right, left. And of course, if you're left-handed, you do still matter almost as much as a right-handed person, so left, right for you. And then 2 shots with the foot afterwards. I'm focusing on playing with a single pedal because then everybody is included. So 2 shots with the right foot. Of course, you can play 1 shot with each foot if you've got a double pedal. It certainly does give you even more speed possibility if you're looking for that. So that was what part 1 was about, and I'm assuming that you've taken some time to practice what was in part 1 before trying part 2. If you haven't, what the hell are you doing here? Go and practice part 1 and then come back. But let's assume that you have done that like a good student. Let's look at how we play today's fill. Now today we're looking at a 6-stroke fill. It works very much the same as the 4-stroke one, but it gives us a few more options with a rhythm while using the pattern. So the pattern is very much the same as the 4-stroke with slightly more single strokes. So 4 shots with the hands, right, left, and then 2 feet afterwards. So let's start by playing that just on the snare drum like we did for the first one, and it would sound something like this. Right, left, foot, foot, right, left, foot, foot, right, left, foot, foot. And so on. And so very much the same way that you would take time to practice the 4-stroke version from last lesson, you take some time and get that to be nice and comfortable under your hands, just on the one drum, until you got that speed and that smoothness nice and comfortable under your hands. Okay, so for the second part of this lesson, we're once again going to go to the rest of the drum kit and start moving around with this fill. Now, of course, you've got more hands to play with now. There's 4 shots, so it gives you more things that you can do across the drum set. Let's try 2 or 3 examples just to kind of give you some ideas. But once again, I want you to come up with your own ideas. I want your creativity to come out so that you can make your fill sound like you. So let's try the examples first and then we'll go from there. So the first example is very much like we did in lesson 1. We're going to go through the 4 drums because it's something that we're quite used to, so you don't have to think too much about it. So now I've got 4 strokes. You could just play 4 shots per drum. But it makes for a bit of a long drum roll, and it depends on how you're using it. Certainly you can. What I think is more effective is to just play 2 shots and 2 shots, then the foot, 2 shots, 2 shots, then the foot. So it's something like this. And of course, when you get more comfortable, you can speed it up. And start moving it across the drum set. So that's a good place to start because, as I say, that sort of movement across the 4 drums in their normal order, in their descending order, if you will, is something that a lot of drummers have already played in some form or the other, most notably that one. But once you're used to that, let's try some other ones. Now, let me show you an example that I quite like. I just like the way it sounds. So there are 2 parts to what I'm going to play here. The first part will start with a snare, a tom. I'm going to go for tom 1 with the left hand, and then 2 shots on tom 3. So I have this, followed by 2 feet. So the first section is, that'll be section number 1. And then I kind of swap it around, but not really. For the second part, I play tom 3 and tom 1 and end with 2 snares. So the first part, and then backwards, well, not quite backwards, but more or less. So you get this. And of course, when you speed it up and not hit the 6 together, you get a nice little fill across the drum set. That kind of waves across. I like the way it feels. The motion is very nice. Okay, let's try one more example that's also a little bit odd maybe, but certainly good for practice. I'm going to incorporate the hi-hat and tom-3, so complete opposite ends of the frequency spectrum. So 2 snares, floor tom and hi-hat. My first 4 shots, and then not quite reverse again, but I'm going to do the other way around, back to the snare for the second half. So I get and once again, if we speed it up, it's something that's a little bit interesting, especially when you're bringing in those high hi-hat notes along with all the low drum sounds over here. So there are 3 examples that will kind of move your hands around the drum set. Once again, of course, you can try your own things and see what comes out when you play, but try those examples first and then move to some of your own things and see what you can come up with, things that you like the way they sound, which is what you ultimately are looking for. Okay, and now we get to the last part of this lesson, which is once again adding this fill in with a groove. Now, it is slightly more complicated than the first fill was in part 1 because that fill was in 4 strokes. This one is in 6 strokes. Now, if we go back to our conventional drum roll, which is semiquavers, there are in a bar of music 16 semiquavers. So 16 shots across the drum set if you're playing one whole fill like that. So just to show you what I mean. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there you've got 4 times 4, 16 shots. Now 4 fits beautifully into that, but 6 doesn't quite fit in. 6 you can add in twice and then you're left with 4 afterwards. Hopefully you have enough maths understanding to get how that works. So what we need to do with this fill is one of 2 things. We either need to play a few of them and then end with something else, or we need to start the fill maybe a little bit later. And then a third option, which is not what I said just now when I said 2 options, is to play it at a different speed, which of course you can do with any of these fills, but this one in particular works quite nicely. Let's start with the what might be the simplest method to grasp first, which is to keep it the same speed, but to play a few of them and then tag something else on afterwards. So as I said, it's 6 shots for the fill, and you can play 2 of those, and then you're left with 4 shots afterwards. So the easiest method, I would say, would be to play 2 of these fills. Let's stay on the snare for now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, foot, 1, 2, 3, 4, foot, and then you need 4 more shots. And those 4 shots can once again maybe be single strokes or something. So let's just go with single strokes for now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you got, it will be on the screen now, one group of 6, another group of 6, and then a group of 4. And so we have this. And that fill will fit in the same amount of time as the fills we were doing with the groove in part number 1. Now, I particularly like this one because there's something really nice about contrasting a rhythm that's in 3 over a rhythm that is in 2 or in 4. The odd over the even makes for quite a nice contrast as long as it resolves eventually. Of course, we can't, that's why we need to play 4 at the end, so we land back on the crash on 1, the start of the new bar. If we don't do that, or we don't necessarily have to, there are, with drums, as many of us probably know, there aren't a lot of rules that limit what we can do, but as a general rule, as a general guideline, it's good to end back on 1 with the crash, so you want to play 4 at the end to get it auto resolve, if that all makes sense. So let's try and play that fill just with the snare for now and see how it sounds in a drum beat. I'll start slow. It really comes alive when it's faster, but let's start at a slow speed. Okay, and you can kind of hear how there's a slight different feel in the fill now because the rhythm feels different. It's not the same rhythm anymore. It does work quite nicely. So let's see if we can bring in some of the other drums using the examples that we played earlier in the lesson. So let's start with going through the drums again, like we did for the first example, where we went And of course, after all of that, I need 4 more strokes. So I'm going to go for, let's stay with snares for now, at the end. So I should have this. And of course, you can change those hands at the end to be anything you want, any 4 shots across the drum set. Let's give it a bit more speed and see what it sounds like, shall we? And there you can see I kind of deviated into the second example that I showed you. So any of those examples will work, but the main goal is that you play 2 groups of the 6 and then a group of 4 at the end. Now, without making this lesson too long, there are of course things that you can do to change it up. You can put the 4 at the beginning if you want to, and maybe use one of the fills that we did in lesson 1, right, left, foot, foot, and then the rest of them you play as the pattern we're doing today. Just bear in mind, you might then run into the same problem that we mentioned in lesson 1, where you've got 3 feet at the end, because you'll have right, left, foot, foot, right, left, right, left, 3 feet at the end there. So you might then have to change the end of the fill, or use a double pedal, or just work on being the strongest drummer or fastest drummer on the planet. So it depends on what you want to play. You can even put the 4 strokes in the middle, where you go, anything like that will also work. It will give you a different type of feel for the fill. But that's more what we want to do in lesson 3, where we play around with these things like little blocks and move them. Now there is one more thing I'd like to look at for this fill in terms of speed, and then I'll play a bit at the end to kind of use the ideas a bit, and that's to play at the speed of triplets. Now, or sextuplets is probably the better word to use. Now, the idea here is that where you normally play 4 strokes, you play 6 in the same amount of time, so it's a little bit faster. So for each, let's go back to what we said for the fill in part 1. For each hi-hat that you play, for your conventional fill, you play 2 shots on the drum set. So if the beat is that fast, the fill is this fast. Now I can't do this with one hand, but if you, let me try and do it with one hand. If you're not with a sextuplet, you've got to play 3 shots for each hi-hat. That sort of thing. Of course, when your beat is faster, it makes for a very fast drum roll. So just with the snare, what does that sound like? It's something like this. Something along those lines. Now you can use this pattern with that sort of fill quite nicely, because it's 6 shots. It's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And once again, if your maths is anything better than kindergarten, you should understand that that is 6. So you get this sort of pattern now. That sort of thing. And the same bass drum dilemma faces you at the end there. Now that pattern, once you've practiced it enough, is really nice for something that's a little bit faster, but also doesn't tire your hands out too much, because the foot is there just to give that millisecond break so that the hands can reset and play again. So if we were to play that a bit faster, now you'll notice what I'm doing there is I'm not actually playing the last group. And this is how I personally find it to work very well for me. I don't play 4 of them. I either just play something like a snare and simple at the end. So, just really nothing on that last part. Or maybe something slightly more, but still quite slow in comparison. Anything like that, just to kind of make it easy to hit the crash cymbal afterwards. It depends on the song, it depends on what I want to do, and it depends on how fast the song is, but that's a general rule to follow. So that's pretty much, I think, everything we want to cover with the different fills. That last one might take a bit more practice, because you really got to be very comfortable playing it at a high speed. But that pretty much covers what you want to know there. So let's see if we can play a little bit on the drum set and just start using these patterns. Helps if I turn the mic up again. Okay, so that's just a basic idea of some of the things that you can play with that pattern, using both the semi-quaver speed or the conventional speed and the triplet speed, and hopefully it will just guide you towards some of your own ideas and things that you can add to your own playing. So I think that pretty much covers it for part 2. In part 3, we'll spend some time looking at how to use these two patterns around the stuff that you'd normally play as fills. And of course, that's a very subjective thing because we're all different, but we'll try and cover as much as we can just to give you some ideas on how to link it all together. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. Feel free to leave a comment or let me know any feedback or talk about the weather, whatever you want. I'm always keen and always listening. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to leave a like and maybe subscribe to the channel. It really does help. Otherwise, hopefully I will see you in the next one, and thank you so much for watching.